We're constantly hearing about different medications,
Hmm.
for everything from maybe a restless night to more serious conditions.
Hmm.
It really makes you wonder about the economic engine driving all of this.
Yeah.
What's the actual scale of the market for these regulated substances?
It's a huge market
Yeah.
and a critically important sector of the global economy, often operating somewhat behind the scenes, you could say.
Right.
Today, we're going to try and shine a light on it.
Exactly. We're taking a deep dive into the global controlled substances market. We've got this comprehensive market research report here,
Yeah, lots of data.
rich with data and in-depth analysis. So, our mission for you today is to distill the key insights. Just how large is this market? What are the main things fueling its expansion?
Drivers, yeah.
Where is it most significant geographically and growing fastest? And what kinds of medications are really at the forefront? Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's get started. So, according to the report, the global market for controlled substances is estimated to reach USD 48.53 billion in 2025.
Wow, $48.5 billion. That's a truly significant figure.
It is.
And it's not a static market, is it? I mean, it's growing.
Not at all. The report projects pretty substantial growth, forecasting a market size of USD 73.9154 billion by the year 2033.
73.9 billion. That's a considerable leap.
Hmm.
So what's the anticipated rate of this expansion, like the year-on-year growth?
Well, the report indicates a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 5.40% from 2025 to 2033.
Okay, 5.4%.
Yeah. So to put it simply, this means the market's expected to grow by an average of 5.40% each year throughout that period.
Right.
A CAGR like that, well, it signifies pretty healthy and consistent expansion, especially within the pharmaceutical sector.
I see.
And the report also gives some historical context, data from 2021 to 2024, which kind of sets the stage for this forecast.
Okay, so a huge market, consistent growth. What are the primary drivers? What's behind this increasing demand for controlled substances?
There are several key factors, really. First and foremost is the rising prevalence of mental health disorders.
Okay.
Conditions like anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, they're becoming much more recognized and reported globally.
You hear about it a lot more.
Exactly. The World Health Organization estimates around 280 million people worldwide experience depression. And back in 2019, 1 in 8 individuals actually had a mental health disorder.
1 in 8. That's huge.
It is. And this growing prevalence, it naturally increases the need for medications to manage these conditions.
Those are, yeah, concerning numbers. And I'd imagine the events of the past few years have only made things worse.
Indeed. The COVID-19 pandemic, it had a notable impact. Initial estimates suggested something like a 26% increase in anxiety disorders.
26%.
Yeah, and a 28% rise in major depressive disorders just within the first year alone.
Wow.
So that surge in mental health challenges, it has undoubtedly contributed to the increased demand for related medications.
That makes a lot of sense. What other factors are playing a role here?
Another really significant driver is the growing incidence of chronic pain conditions.
Right, chronic pain.
The WHO states that nearly 20% of the global population lives with chronic pain. That's 1 in 5 people.
1 in 5.
Yeah. This includes conditions like arthritis, neuropathy, fibromyalgia, all sorts.
Okay.
And for a clearer picture, maybe look at the U.S. The prevalence of diagnosed arthritis was nearly 19% in 2022.
Almost 20% just for arthritis.
And that figure increases considerably with age. So as populations worldwide keep aging, well, we can anticipate a further rise in these conditions.
So the aging global population is a big underlying factor. Are there other medical trends influencing this market?
Yes. The increasing incidence of cancer also plays a crucial role.
How so?
Well, these patients often require potent pain-relieving medications, including opioids for effective pain management and, palliative care.
Right, managing serious pain.
Exactly. And then furthermore, the expansion of substance abuse treatment programs is also a key contributor.
Ah, interesting. So treatment programs themselves drive demand.
In a way, yes. As more resources are directed towards addressing issues like, say, the opioid crisis, the demand for medications like methadone and buprenorphine.
The ones used in treatment.
Right. Used in medication-assisted treatment, MAT, to support recovery, that demand also increases.
Okay. So we have a better understanding of the why behind this growth. Now let's turn our attention to the where. Which regions have the largest slice of this pie, and where's the growth really taking off?
Geographically, North America currently holds the largest market share. It accounts for over 40% of the global revenue in 2025.
Over 40%, that's dominant.
It is. That's a market size of about USD 17.96 billion. However, its projected CGR from 2025 to 2033 is a bit more moderate, 3.9%.
Okay, still growing, but not the fastest.
Right. And within North America, the United States is the largest single market, estimated at USD 14.17 billion in 2025, with a CGR of 3.7%.
And you mentioned the opioid crisis connection.
Yeah, this is partly related to ongoing efforts to manage that crisis through those medication-assisted treatment programs we talked about.
Okay, so North America is the current heavyweight. What about other parts of the world? Europe,
Europe also holds a very substantial share, over 30% of the global revenue.
percent. Okay.
That translates to a market size of USD 14.07 billion in 2025, and its projected CAGR is slightly higher than North America's at 4.5%. So steady growth there, too.
Interesting. So Europe's also a significant market,
Yeah.
continuing to expand. But the report highlighted one region with particularly fast growth, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Asia Pacific, that's the fastest growing region.
Okay, tell me about that.
It has a market share of around 23% in 2025, which is about USD 11.65 billion. But the key number is its projected CAGR, a remarkable 8.1% from 2025 to 2033.
8.1%. That's almost double North America's rate. Why so fast?
Well, it seems closely linked to the increasing recognition and reported prevalence of mental health issues across the region.
Huh. Similar drivers, but maybe starting from a lower base of treatment.
Kinda. For example, the WHO estimates over 100 million people in Asia experience depression.
Wow.
So this growth, it reflects a growing awareness and acceptance of mental health treatment in many of these countries, plus expanding healthcare access. These are relatively newer trends there compared to, say, North America or Europe.
That explosive growth in Asia Pacific is really notable. What about the market landscape in other places? South America, Middle East, Africa?
Yeah, they're smaller shares, but still growing. South America accounts for just over 5% of the market. The Middle East is around 2%, and Africa approximately 1%.
Okay. And their growth rates?
They all show solid growth potential. Their projected HGRs are 6.1% for South America, 6.7% for the Middle East, and 5.7% for Africa. All healthy numbers.
Interesting. Any specific country examples that stand out?
Yeah, the report gives a few. China's estimated market size is USD 4.89 billion in 2025, with a 7.6% growth.
Right.
India is smaller, USD 1.16 billion, but has a really striking 10% CAGR.
10%. Wow.
Then you've got the UK at USD 2.36 billion with a 5.3% CAGR. Germany at USD 2.79 billion, 4.7% CAGR. And Brazil at USD 0.79 billion with a 6.7% CAGR.
It's fascinating to see those varied growth paths across different countries and regions. Okay, now let's shift focus to the what's. What types of controlled substances are actually, leading the pack right now?
Okay, so when we look at the market segmentation by product type, opioids currently hold the largest share.
Opioids. Okay, that makes sense given what you said about pain.
Exactly. It's primarily driven by their established use in managing chronic pain and also cancer-related pain, like we discussed earlier.
Right, right. And the report also mentioned another product segment with significant growth potential.
Yes, stimulants. They represent the fastest growing segment.
Stimulants. Okay, what's driving that?
Well, they have well-defined medical uses, of course, treating conditions like narcolepsy and other sleep disorders. But there's also this growing trend in their use for cognitive enhancement.
Cognitive enhancement. Ah, the so-called smart drugs area. That's where things get particularly interesting, perhaps controversial too.
Precisely. The report identifies this emerging trend as a contributing factor to the market's expansion within that stimulant category.
Gotcha. Are there other major product types?
Yes. Depressants and cannabinoid drugs are also mentioned as significant product types within the market, although the report we looked at didn't detail their specific growth rates as much.
Okay, we've covered the types of drugs. Now, what about the specific medical conditions they're being used for? How does the market break down by indication?
Right. So when segmented by indication, anxiety actually holds the largest share of the market currently.
Anxiety, really? More than pain?
At the moment, yes, according to this report's segmentation. It corresponds with that increasing awareness and people seeking treatment for mental health issues that we talked about before.
So greater recognition and more people seeking help for anxiety are directly reflected in these market trends. Very interesting. Which treatment area is growing the fastest then?
That would be the pain management segment. It's expanding at a significant pace.
Okay, so anxiety is the biggest share now, but pain management is catching up fast.
Seems that way, yeah. The growth is fueled by that rising incidence of chronic pain conditions we keep mentioning, and also the increasing number of surgical procedures performed globally.
Right. Surgeries often need strong pain relief afterwards.
Exactly. Both factors necessitate effective pain relief strategies. Sleep disorders and seizures are also identified as other notable indication segments.
Right. Okay, that gives a clear picture of the conditions driving demand. Now, how are these medications typically reaching the patients? What about the distribution channels?
Well, the report indicates that hospital pharmacies currently account for the largest share of distribution.
Hospital pharmacies. That makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah, it's understandable given the volume of hospital admissions for various conditions that require controlled substances, acute care, post-op needs, things like that.
Right, immediate needs. But what about the ongoing management? Like for chronic conditions, people aren't always in the hospital.
True. And for those chronic conditions, and just for ease of access generally, retail pharmacies are the distribution channel that's experiencing rapid growth.
Your local pharmacy.
Exactly. Individuals with long-term needs for, say, pain management, anxiety meds, or sleep aids often rely on their local retail pharmacies for regular prescriptions.
And there are more and more chain pharmacies making it easier too, I guess.
Yeah, the expansion of pharmacy chains has definitely contributed to increased accessibility. Online pharmacies are also mentioned as another channel, though likely smaller right now.
Fascinating. Okay, we've looked at the size, the drivers, the regions, the products, the indications, the channels. Quite a tour. Zooming out a bit, are there any broader external factors that could significantly influence this market? The report briefly mentioned tariffs.
Yes, it did. The report briefly touches upon the potential indirect effects of what it calls Trump's tariff war,
Oh,
specifically mentioning Liberation Day tariffs in 2025. Now, it doesn't detail direct impacts on the controlled substances market itself, but it uses the electronics sector as sort of an illustrative example of wider economic forces that can be at play.
okay, so just as an example, how did those tariffs impact the electronics industry, according to the report?
Well, these tariffs, which some were universal on things like steel and aluminum, others targeted specific countries and goods, they introduced strains into global trade.
Right, trade tensions.
hmm The trade dynamics between the U.S. and China, in particular, significantly impacted electronics. It led to increased costs for components like semiconductors.
Oh yeah, chips.
Right, tariffs up to 25% on those,
Ooh,
lithium-ion batteries 20%, consumer electronics maybe 10–15%.
that must have caused problems.
Yeah, it resulted in disruptions to established supply chains and just an overall rise in component expenses.
So how does this relate back to pharmaceuticals or controlled substances then?
Well, the point is, while these specific tariffs weren't directly on pharmaceuticals in the same way, the example shows how global trade policies can affect supply chains and costs across various industries.
Right.
And the pharmaceutical sector isn't entirely immune to those kinds of pressures. Even if it wasn't the primary target here, it's about the potential for ripple effects.
So while maybe not a direct hit on pharma from those particular tariffs, the electronics example demonstrates how wider economic policies can, ripple through global markets. It affects supply networks, costs.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that this pharmaceutical market, even for controlled substances, operates within a much larger economic context.
Precisely. It just underscores the interconnectedness of the global economy. Policy shifts in one area can have, well, implications across different sectors, unexpected ones sometimes.
Okay, let's try and synthesize all of this. What are the really key takeaways from our deep dive into the global controlled substances market?
Well, first, the market is substantial. It's approaching, USD 50 billion in 2025. And it has a significant projected growth trajectory, heading towards nearly USD 74 billion by 2033.
Big numbers, steady growth.
Right. Second, this growth is primarily fueled by those increasing rates of mental health disorders and chronic pain conditions worldwide. That seems undeniable.
Okay.
Third, we see notable regional variations. North America is currently the biggest market share.
But Asia Pacific is growing fastest.
Exactly, demonstrating the most rapid expansion. Fourth, looking at segments, opioids and anxiety medications are currently dominant product and indication segments, respectively.
Right.
But stimulants and pain management are the areas showing really fast growth.
Got it. And distribution.
Primarily through hospital and retail pharmacies, with retail growing quickly. And finally, yes, broader economic factors like tariffs can exert indirect influences, just reminding us of that wider context.
So a large and evolving market with pretty significant implications for healthcare, for the global economy. And seeing this growing reliance on these medications, it really prompts some important considerations, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, considering these market dynamics and the underlying health trends driving them, it raises a crucial question for you, the listener.
Hmm.
Beyond just the economic figures, what are the broader societal, maybe even ethical implications we should be contemplating as our use of these controlled substances continues to increase?
Hmm.
It's definitely a topic that warrants further thought and exploration, well beyond just the market report.